So glad you guys could join in today. This is our second entrepreneurship event, and so excited to have you all with us today, whether it's your afternoon or your evening, depending on your time zone and where you're joining in from. My name is Susan. I work full-time for SHIP. I work out of Kansas City, Missouri. I would love for you all to throw in the chat and engage as much as you can. Where are you joining from tonight? And just give us a little introduction. If you want to share a LinkedIn to start networking with your peers here, feel free to do that as well. Um, I don't know about you guys, I sit on a lot of these meetings every day, all day long, and I promise they're so much more fun. If you can have your camera on, it really helps the speaker to be able to see smiling faces and head nods and things like that. So if you feel comfortable and can be on camera, feel free to do that. If you're not speaking, please do mute yourself so we can just adjust for sound quality and have a really good recording. But do please engage in the chat. You have a community here. We had over 160 people RSVP for the event today. I see we've got about 24 that are in so far. We'll have more that will join in, but engage with your community here. Get to know each other, meet each other, engage in that chat. And we will have the Q&A open as well to help us keep track of any of your questions for our speaker today. As with most of these types of events, we try our very hardest to get to all the questions. We might not be able to get to all the questions, but if you throw them in the Q&A, we'll try to get those answered even after the event too, and post those answers for you. And then lastly, just please do the closing survey. We actually have another new question in there for a new project that we're looking at launching in this program. So we want to get some feedback from you all on that. If this is your first time to join us, just know that there is a committee of people behind the scenes making all of this go. We have an amazing team of SHIP volunteers that are helping make this happening, and they're working in 3 different areas. They're working in community building, so they are the group that launched the SHIP members. It is private group for just SHIP members. The entrepreneurship LinkedIn group, and helping drive content there and looking at what they can be doing in our new membership portal that's going to be launching this spring, summer. And then we also have a team that helps put together these events every month. And they do have a plan to have an event every month for this whole year. So we're excited and I realize we're at the end of the year, but at SHIP, we think of years differently. So we're June to July year. So we have plans for a whole year of programming. And then we have another team that is really helping us look critically at what should we be doing for our entrepreneurs at national convention and other kind of national events beyond. So we're already starting to have those conversations. The QR codes here will take you to some information about this new venture that we're doing at SHIP. And so feel free to scan those and learn more about what we're doing. And then, yeah, did you miss our first event? We already had one event. Maybe this is your first time here. If you want to see the recording of last month's event, Am I Good Enough to Start? Feel free to scan that QR code. It's on our YouTube channel for SHIP, and we'd love to get you that content as well. So I'm going to do a really quick poll. We're just going to kind of see who all is here in this space. So it should have popped up on your screen. Somebody tell me if you don't see it. You should see a poll on your screen. And so if you'll go ahead and start telling us kind of what best describes your interest in entrepreneurship right now. Are you turning an idea into business? Are you kind of exploring it, looking at a side hustle, looking at a specific problem, or you're just here curious and learning? Where are you kind of coming from today? So I see we've got about 17 votes in so far. Keep them coming. And we'll take a look at the group responses here in just a second. Awesome. Feel free to keep throwing those in the chat too. But here's who we've got. So you guys should be able to see the results. Looks like most people are here are kind of looking at an extra income or side hustle. So Francesca, that might help you as you're speaking
Yeah.
with us tonight to kind of see where everybody's coming from. And I do want to just take this moment to introduce you all to our speaker tonight, Francesca Escato. She has been a champion in this effort for entrepreneurship with us, and she and I have been meeting for Francesca. I think it's been close to a year now since we first connected
Oh,
and started
wow.
talking about this
Yeah,
effort and
that
seeing
makes
it come
sense.
to
That makes
seeing
sense because Isaac and I had our first powwow. I think it was convention last year.
yes,
And so that is a year for sure.
yeah. So you can see a little bit about Francesca's journey here. Certainly somebody who's been in the entrepreneur space, very much been in the ship space, a speaker, a coach, software initiatives, all different types of things. And so we're very excited to have Francesca come today and just share some insights about how do you get started. So as she's talking again, please engage in the chat. Throw your comments, throw your ideas, throw your suggestions. If you have a question that you want to ask Francesca as she's going through the content, feel free to throw that in the Q&A and we'll try to make sure that those questions get answered. And so, Francesca, I'm going to let you take it over from here.
Sure. Thank you, Susan, for the intro and welcome everybody. Um, yes, a super mom. Well, I don't know that I'm super, but I'm definitely a mom. I have three daughters. I'll, just love on them before I get started. My oldest just graduated from college in May. She is in sound design and she wants to go into production and all kinds of fun sound and music things. My second is a senior in biomedical. No, sorry, biochemistry. Let me not get that wrong. She wants to be a legal drug dealer. Um, she wants to go into research and development of cures for diseases. And then I have my youngest, who is a freshman in college, and she's going into architecture and interior design. So some sort of STEM across all three. They're amazing people. I love my kids. I like them too. So I enjoy time with them. And my dog is my buddy. She's Chula, and yeah, but she's not in college, and she's not going to be. Um, if we can go straight into the presentation, Susan, I'll kind of speak to myself. I mean, about me, in case you guys don't know my journey, I'll kind of throw it in as we go. Just um, as a side note, I want you to be thinking about whatever idea you have as we discuss this. There'll be moments when we'll pause for you to take notes and kind of make this a working session for you. Okay, so have a pen and paper or pencil, whatever that you can take notes in handy. What we're going to use to talk about how to start your business is this framework that I developed. I'm a business coach, among other things, and I have been working with startups, especially in product development and prototyping, for the last 15 years or so. And I created this framework because I found people working in good things at the wrong time. And so, how to start really depends on where you are right now and what the immediate next step is. As engineers, we tend to overdevelop our product before launching. And your business is so much more than your product or service. So it's very important that you kind of pinpoint which phase of these six you are in. Hopefully, it's one or two. I mean, if you're in three, that's fantastic. But definitely one or two. And then focus on what it is that you need to do to get from phase one to phase two or from phase two to phase three. Okay. So the six phases of business development, phase one is ideation. Phase two, prototyping. Phase three, monetization. Phase four, momentum. Phase five, stability. Phase six, that nobody wants to get to, is decline. We're going to go into each of these in depth as we move forward. Next slide, please. I'm recovering from a cold, so my voice is still a little hoarse. Okay, so let's talk about revenue, and let's get realistic about when you can expect to be making money, because sometimes people don't understand how quickly you can be making money, and then others might be very far off or unrealistic about how long it takes to actually get to revenue. Okay, the purple line is, let's say, how money flows, and then we'll talk about the orange line in a second. If the line is going down below zero, that means you're putting money in. Okay, if the line is going up, that means you are getting revenue. But at the beginning, as you can see, first is excuse me, first is going to go down. There is a bit of an unknown there as far as how much money you're going to have to put in, because it's going to depend on what kind of business you're building. Services, for the most part, is the least expensive kind of business that you can start, because what you are providing is your brain. Sometimes you might need insurance or some sort of subscription or professional certification, licensure to serve in that capacity, like maybe a professional engineer certification if you want to go into certain fields. Or you might need a PhD if you're going to go and be advising research and development in certain areas, right? But for the most part, the investment for service businesses is you and whatever you need in order to qualify as an expert voice or as subject matter expert in that industry. For products, it's going to depend on the kind of product that you're building. As I tell people, unless you are doing something related to drugs or health or like intra-body, uh, or rocket science, chances are you can build a very inexpensive prototype and you can go really far without having to do things like clinical trials, or how do you test a rocket without launching a rocket or without building one, right? So there are some types of products that are going to require a lot of capital, but for the most part, anything that has to do with devices, that you might be thinking of accessories or technical gadgets or things like that, you should be able to build a prototype rather inexpensively, especially for the purpose of phase 2 and phase 3, which we'll get to in a second. That means that although your initial phase 1 investment is going to require some capital, for the most part, you should be able to start recovering your investment, which is the purple line going up below the zero, and you can get back to zero, meaning break even, right? You can recover that investment rather quickly when you think about the long lifespan of your business. After that, you should quickly start seeing some increase in that revenue, assuming that during that phase of investing in your product, you were actually achieving product market fit. The time you spend in phases 1 and 2 is going to pay off later. But it's in phase 2 especially that you really figure out, what do people want? Not how do I get people to buy the thing I have, but rather you get to really understand, what do people want? And if you figure that out, then that curve can start going up steadily, even if not steeply, but steadily up, right? In some cases, you can hit momentum really fast and you're just growing, right? But steady is always better if it's going in the right direction. You don't want to be going steadily down. That would be decline, phase 6, right? But you want to hit momentum, and then you want to be able to go into a stable phase. When I think of stable brands, I think of McDonald's, I think of Burger King, I think of these brands that have established themselves. They're not expecting necessarily a 50% growth in burger sales from year to year. They might be expecting 5% or even 15%, and they do some of that through acquisitions or new products or diversification. They go into, I don't know, soda and drinks or whatever, right? But that growth is stable and is more predictable when you're in that stable phase. Momentum, however, looks like those big steep curves that go up. Those are, let's call them growth spurts. When you think of humans growing, and you see that kid in June and they, I don't know, they measure 4 feet 2 inches, and you see them in August 3 months later and they're like 5 feet 6, right? Growth spurs. That is the momentum phase when you're going through that spike. And during those times, revenue does go up. Okay. Now, what I want you to see is that parallel to what your business is doing, your strategy, which is that orange line, your strategy is adjusting. Your strategy is sometimes catching up, sometimes making adjustments to move the curve in the direction you want. Sometimes you don't get it right immediately, um, but ultimately, that's really how you are navigating. If anybody has a dog, you know how you're supposed to walk the dog, but sometimes the dog walks you? That's the relationship with your business. You are leading it, but the market and your clients will at times take you in directions that you weren't considering. And so that's the important thing, is to see the relationship between that revenue and your ability to respond to what is happening in each phase appropriately. And so to understand what I mean by that, we'll go to the next slide and I'll be able to tell you more about that. So these are functions in a company. These are departments, right? Some of you might be working right now in some aspect of production, or maybe you're in R&D. You could be in sales engineering, service, many different areas, right? And so when you are in phase 1, ideation, you do not need to be thinking about HR. You do not need to be thinking about accounting. It doesn't mean that you don't have an accountant that can help you file your taxes at the end of the year. It means that you don't need that function actively operating in your business, and you yourself don't have a lot of things to worry about in the accounting area. So if you find yourself daydreaming, because that's what ideation is. Ideation looks like 90% research. You look for things on the internet. You buy a couple of books on the topic that you're interested in. You attend workshops. You are subscribing to publications. You are going to trade shows. Ideation is in your head. It's the world of ideas. It's you exploring possibilities. It's all about marketing at this time. And if you've been thinking about sales or legal implications or things like that, you've gone a little too far. You want to stay in marketing. And what I mean by that, what you really want to understand in the ideation phase is there a market for this thing that I am considering? If there is no market for it, or if the market is small, or if you're thinking, I'm going to build a global brand from day one, well, how are you going to do that? Because you might have a great service idea. You could do consulting on geotechnical something, something. But where is that most likely to take off? In your town, in your state? in the US? Are you going to have to network your way into, I don't know, I had a client once that she was doing this awesome work. She was creating these sensors that could capture the stampedes of animals in Africa and from that generate electricity. And so obviously she had to develop networks in Africa in order for her to be able to place these sensors and do these different things over in a place where there were stampedes frequently enough that she could capture energy. The project didn't take off because it was really difficult to transfer that energy into the grid. But anyhow, I digress. The point is, you have to start thinking about where is the market and how can I tap into that market? How many degrees of separation am I from it so that I can actually turn this idea into a prototype? We'll talk more about that in a second. When you're in phase 2, prototyping, now you want to start thinking about, okay, let me just create the first gadget. I call it the Frankenstein. It's got to be ugly. It's got to be like almost not functional. It's just, tape and glue and styrofoam and PVC and like all the weird materials that you can get at home and in Home Depot. That's what your prototype can be. We're not talking about a fancy design yet. We're talking about from idea to tangible sample that I can use to talk about this idea so that it is no longer in my brain and it's beyond a paper drawing, although a paper drawing can be a prototype in certain circumstances, right? But it's the thing that you can concoct together, and that becomes your prototype. So now you're thinking about, what would it take to produce this, to manufacture this, to make this? Is it something that can be handmade in my garage to start? Or do I need to get some factory to manufacture, 500 at a time? That your budget is going to depend on that, right? Like how much you invest in the prototyping phase will have some implications based on this. But the first one is your Frankenstein. Okay. And then you start thinking about R&D. Are there better materials that I could use in the future? Not right now, but you start making kind of your wish list. Oh, I'm using PVC now, but I wonder what would happen if this was aluminum instead, or if it was, I don't know, plexiglass instead of PVC, whatever, right? So you start thinking about those functions and you start putting that in your wish list, because as you bring that prototype to the world, whatever that market is that you defined in your ideation phase, when you start bringing that prototype out there, that's the feedback you're going to get. People are going to say, oh, this looks great, but it's too heavy. Or they're going to say, oh, it's awesome, but it's bulky. Can I get it smaller so I can carry it in my bag? Whatever, right? They're going to tell you if it meets their need and how it can better meet their needs. So you're going to be in this R&D mode thinking, are there better materials? Is there a better supplier that I can use? Is there a lighter version of this thing? Or can I offer this service virtually instead of in person, or the other way around? Can I do more in person, etc., right? Depending on that feedback. When you get into monetization, you're still going to be doing marketing, because please note that marketing is present from day one. Okay. But when you're in monetization, you are selling the thing. It's sporadic. It doesn't happen all the time. You don't yet have, you haven't struck gold, like a gold mine, but you find gold in the river, right? And so you're there, and now you're trying to really improve your offer. Monetization is all about sales, is about perfecting your sales pitch. It's making sure that people understand the value, and that when you speak to that ideal client, that you are using the words that they are wanting to hear, that they understand the pain you can solve or the dream that you can make come true. Because by the way, peoples, that's the only two things anybody wants. They want their pain to go away or they want their dream to come true. Um, Definitely you want to be talking about production. Can you keep up with this demand? You know, if you get 5 orders in one day, does your world just turn upside down, or are you able to keep up? Because if you want 20 orders a day and you can't keep up with 5, then you're going to have to hold growth until you can meet that demand, right? Accounting is still there, R&D is still there. Now, momentum. And this is the thing. I would say that 80% of people stay in monetization, and that's your side gig, your side hustle, the part-time entrepreneur that is making some money, right? But they're not making enough to leave their job. And when they hit momentum, now they're like, man, I'm working my full-time job. The business is growing, but I'm scared to leave my job because this is not necessarily consistent. Like this growth is crazy, but I don't know yet if it's dependable, right? Because the stability part is not there. It could just be a spike. It could just be like it's Christmas, people go crazy buying the thing, and then January comes back and now you're out of a job and your business is back to, unstable. So that is where a lot of entrepreneurs either quit and say, oh, this is too much work, because momentum does bring a lot of that demand. And then you have to meet that demand with your production, or they choose to stay small because they can keep their job and not worry about the instability of the entrepreneur life. Okay. So just want you to be aware of the difference between monetizing your business and making $5 and momentum when everything ramps up, production and revenue. Okay. And stability, definitely you want to have all of your functions already in place. I want you to see the difference between momentum and stability. In momentum, things like HR are you're figuring it out as you go. You're bringing in a team, you're putting all of that in place. This is where a consultant is very helpful to fill in some of that legal and HR functions, because you might not know yet exactly what you're doing. A lot of entrepreneurs come in with product expertise or functional expertise. A hairdresser knows how to do hair, but she don't necessarily know how to be an HR person or how to do the legal stuff or even the accounting or any of that, right? So you want to know your strengths, because momentum requires you to put on a CEO hat and stability requires that you be a good CEO. Okay. And then decline doesn't require any of this other than an exit strategy. Decline means, you know, BlackBerry. It was a great thing, and then other phones came, better technology, and BlackBerries were just left behind. They didn't keep up. So the BlackBerry declined, and goodbye BlackBerry. At that point is, do we sell our assets? How do we recover the cost that we have invested here? How do we make the most out of this situation? I'm going to pause here, and I would like for you to kind of think for a couple of seconds what phase you think you're in, and then you put it in the chat, whether it's ideation, prototyping, monetization, momentum, stability, or decline.
Francesca, I've also got a poll ready to go with that same information. So either do the poll or throw it in the chat or both, but I'm going to launch the poll as well.
Okay, cool. And I saw a question. Yes, this is good for service or product. Either way, it's the same process. And this is when people are like, oh, but I'm doing, I don't know, pizza instead of, say, software. I'm like, well, the process is the same. What you do in each phase might vary, but the phases don't change. It's still the same thing. What makes your pizza different from the other person? Are you going to put pepperoni and mushrooms together or separate? What do people want? They have something is meeting their need today. And so your competition is, I don't know, tuna sandwiches, rice and beans, and other pizza shops. right? All the options that people can consider instead of your pizza is the thing that you're trying to figure out from, ideation. And some of you are in prototyping already. Awesome. That's great. Let me see what else we got. And then we have some in momentum, a couple in stability, and some of you might need to exit. Yep, that happens. Um, so the phases in this model is regardless of what phase you're in. I'm sorry, what business you're in. It's the same for all the things. So Susan, if we can go to the next one. So yeah, where are you? And I saw most of you are in ideation, which is my sweet spot. And so the question now is, what do you need to do today to move to the next phase? Okay, and that's for you. For the bulk of you, the question is, how do you go from ideation to prototype? And then for some of you is, how do I go from prototyping to monetization? Okay, so let's keep going. Susan made these slides look so pretty. Appreciate you. Whoa. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that I had other slides following that. Okay, so let's talk about what it takes to go from ideation to prototyping. As I said earlier, ideation is 90% in your head. It's about the idea. You're workshopping the idea. You're spinning around in your head. You're talking to yourself most of the time. So how you go from idea to prototyping is you have to develop the Frankenstein, and you have to talk to 25 people that are your potential client. Not your mom, not your sister, not your friend in school that thinks you're a genius, but people out in the real world who could buy your service or product tomorrow if it met their need. So what does a prototype look like in this way? Okay, some of you here, or at least one of you, is saying, oh, I'm more of a service person. That's the easiest, because the way you present a service is very simple. Two things. You need a PowerPoint presentation, and you need that PowerPoint presentation to live on a website. That is your prototype. Your prototype is the simplest way to describe one service, not a suite of services, not the 10 things that you're going to offer when you have a team and you're already, doing a whole business. No, it's how are you going to be known? So if you remember, when Amazon started, it was a bookstore. And not only a bookstore, it was a used bookstore online. Super specific, very honed in on a void that was in the market available for the taking. And that's what Amazon did. Today, you can buy a house through Amazon. But when they started, they focused on the one thing. So my question to you is, what is the one thing that you can lead with, whether it's a service or a product, that you can do on your own with what you have? We start thinking, well, but I really want to build a car, want to model this car so that I can introduce it into the industry. And, okay, that's fine. So how are you going to build that prototype car? That is how you go from ideation to prototype. It's by actually getting out of your head and putting how do you say this in English? The something to the metal, pedal to the metal. Yes, pedal to the metal. You have to dare, which is why we did the first workshop is, am I good enough? The answer is yes. But this is where people get stuck in the fear of failing. What we say in the industry is the goal is to fail fast and often. You need to figure out what people don't want. Okay? You need to figure out what is not going to work because that's what gets you closer to what people actually do want. And so the fear of failing is going to paralyze you here. If you keep doubting yourself, if you keep doubting your idea, you are not going to be able to know what everybody else wants or what your ideal client thinks about your offer until you make the offer. And so the prototype is going to look like your minimum viable product. And if you guys have not read Eric Ries's book, you need to go out there, get the book and read it 100 times. It's called The Lean Startup, because it focuses on this that I'm talking about and how you build the leanest, simplest. It doesn't have to be ugly, but it also doesn't have to be pretty. Okay, just the raw thing that you can make an offer on. So when you have that prototype, you are officially in the prototyping phase. That's it. That is what gets you from ideation to prototyping. At that point, you don't go build 10 prototypes. You don't go do, this suite of services, and now you're living in your lab, which is an extension of your brain. The thing that you do in the prototyping phase is figure out that minimum viable product that you can hold in your hand without it falling apart. Okay, that is it. If it can withstand any, minimal scrutiny, it's ready. So when you have that website ready with your service, a picture of you, a contact me page, and then one page that describes the service and about you, that's it. That is all you need. Okay. The next, yes, Benny, thank you for sharing that. The next step that you need to take to go from prototyping to monetization is to share that prototype. Nothing else. And people be like, oh, I need an office. You don't need an office. Oh, but I need a patent. You don't need a patent yet. Please don't go taking your 401k out and spending all your money on a patent. Oh, but people are going to steal my idea. Your idea ain't great yet. So don't worry. Nobody wants to steal your idea because other people are building their own ideas. And until you prove this idea in the marketplace, nobody wants it anyway. Oh, but I need investors. No, you don't. Because what is an investor going to invest on? Your idea, like your brain? Ideas are cheap, guys. Everybody has at least one idea in their lifetime. At least. Let me take that a step further. I think everybody has 2 great ideas in their lifetime. It's all about execution. And so do not spend your time and effort thinking that what you need to do is to patent your idea. I'll tell you why. If you're worried about protecting your intellectual property now at this stage, what's going to happen is that every time you make a change to your design, you're going to have to go and change that patent or submit a new patent. And we can have Isaac answer some questions about that later, since he has gone through clinical trials and all the things in his business. But when you're just starting, you're trying to figure out which idea or which version of your idea your clients will want. You're going to start with, I'm going to make a cake. And then people are going to tell you, but I want pineapple in the middle. I'm Dominican. Our cakes have pineapple in the middle. And then they're going to say, I want frosting. And then the other one's going to say, but the frosting was too sweet. But you went ahead and patented your amazing grandma's frosting recipe. And people don't like it. People wanted to have a little more lemon zest. And so now you have a patent for something that people don't want. I had someone, and this is a real life situation, I had a client who was building this gadget for making empanadas. Now, she didn't understand that she was competing with the fork, right? I can use a fork and I can shape an empanada tortilla before I fry it and it's just fine. And there are other pastry devices that people can use if they really want to automate the process. But she thought, people are going to love this gadget because then they don't have to use a fork. Well, fine, you can try it. She was so sold on her own idea. She did not test it in the market. She took all her savings, I think it was like $50,000, put it into patenting this device that she designed, had it manufactured, and then she was sitting on a warehouse full of these devices because nobody wanted to pay what she needed to get paid in order to recover her cost. And so instead of like giving them away at that point or selling them for $1, she was like, no, I'm gonna, it's a matter of the sales strategy and I just have to get into the right stores. Well, that never happened. Okay. Because it's not about protecting the idea, it's about who gets to market first. And then you can protect it once you have it finalized and you know what it is that you want to do. That's one way to do it. But again, unless you're doing medical stuff or you're doing rocket science, chances are you do not need to have a patent before you hit the market. So, what do you need to do to go from prototyping to monetization? You need to offer this prototype. You need to share it with 25 people who are your potential client. Again, not your mom, not your bro, not your friend at school, but someone who is out in the world, in the wild, in their ecosystem. And so if you have a service and you're thinking, I really want to help realtors with this software solution that is going to help them organize the blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, you need to go talk to 25 realtors that might want this thing, this service, or this software that you're wanting to build. Okay, guys, I am here at my friend's father's funeral, and my husband just let me know that they're almost done and that I should go. But I'll finish with this. What's important here is for you to go and get that feedback from those potential clients. Monetization happens when you make your first sale. That's when you know you have a winning product or offer, I should say. At that point, they're going to say, I want 5 of those. Or they're going to say, if you had it in blue, I'd buy it right now. You're only in monetization when $1 is exchanged. It's not like, oh, that's great. No, that's not. We're not in the business of accolades. We're in the business of transaction. And so when you get paid, that is when you have proven that your product or service is going to be successful. So,
Francesca, I just want to say thank you
yes.
so much for providing this content. We did have one quick question in the chat that may be a very quick answer for you personally, Francesca. Out of all of those 6 phases, which one was the hardest for you personally?
Okay.
And while you're thinking about that, just want to remind everybody that we do have a January event coming. We're honing in on a date and a topic. We'll have some more info soon, and don't forget to do the survey. But curious, Francesca, if you had to pick one of those 6 phases, which one has been the hardest for you personally?
Okay, I will be walking answer, and I apologize, friends.
Francesca, it's a day of juggling, right? So
Yes, it
we're
is.
all
It is
juggling,
that
and we
kind of day.
appreciate you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So the hardest one for me, well, I would say it's 2 of them, is monetization and momentum. I love ideation. I love prototyping. It gives me a whole lot of excitement, and my creativity gets to kick in. Monetization, that iteration process or pivoting depends, right? Sometimes you iterate, sometimes you pivot. The difference between those two, by the way, iteration is just an improvement. Pivoting means changing
completely. So, you're thinking that you're making bikes, but what people really want is a motorcycle. An iteration is making the bike friendlier. Um, a pivot is, we need to go with motorcycles, or we need to go with bikes, but it's really the mom, not the kid, that's going to get it. But that's a whole other workshop. And so that process to me is grueling. And then momentum, when you're growing so fast, is really hard to balance life and family, the business, all the
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
It can be very grueling
Thank
as
you
well.
so much, Francesca, for leading us through these thoughts and this content. We wish you well and sending good thoughts for your friend going through her father's
Thank
funeral.
you. Thank you. If you guys want to have discussions without me, that's fine. Susan can get questions to me and I can answer them at another time via email or any other way that you guys think is appropriate.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So Francesca, we'll say goodbye to you as you head
Thank
off to
you.
go do that. And I just want to take another moment just to say thank you to you all for coming this evening. We are working on a January date. Looks like it's going to be January the 27th, and still working on some content. So excited to share that. And I will send out the recording and more information. We actually do have a little takeaway guide for you, a 30-day challenge with some next steps through each of these phases. And so I'll be sending that out to you all as soon as I can. And thank you all for joining, and we hope that we will see you at the next event. Have a great night, everyone.